Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This is the final event in our Writing in Troubled Times series. My name is Bongani Kona. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Historical Studies at the University of the Western Cape, and I'm also the current chair of PEN South Africa. And yeah, it's a really deep honor to be in conversation this evening, or depending from where you're zooming from, afternoon, morning, but to be in conversation with Tetyana Teren, former executive director of PEN Ukraine. So please, I'll introduce you properly in a moment, Tetyana, but please bear with me. I've got a kind of long introduction, a slightly long introduction, but I promise I won't talk nearly as much afterwards because we really want to hear from you. So this is in preparation for today. I was just going through some of our correspondence. So I'd said in March this year, I wrote to Tetyana. I hope you and your loved ones are holding up all right. I'm sorry again that we couldn't connect while you were here, but I wanted to let you know that we'll be hosting a conversation with Damon Galgut and Peter, a journalist from Ukraine who at the time was traveling through South Africa, next Monday in Cape Town. I'll let you know how it goes, and all the best with everything. And Tetyana replied, "Thank you so much for sharing this news with me. Please send my sincere greetings to Damon and Peter. I'm on the road these days, as I was invited to take part in the presentations of Victoria Amelina's book in Sweden and Germany. You may have heard of Victoria. She was my friend, a writer, a PEN member, and a war crimes researcher. She was killed by a Russian missile in the summer of 2023, living behind her unfinished nonfiction book dedicated to women documenting war crimes. At the time, I had not heard of Victoria, whose book, Looking at Women, Looking at War, is the foundation of our conversation today. But something of your email, those words, friend, killed, Russian missile, have stayed with me. So thank you so much, Tetyana, for joining us this evening and for allowing us a chance to honor your friend and her work. So welcome.
Gani, thank you so much for this warm introduction and for this invitation and this event, this opportunity to speak on behalf of Victoria with your audience and with your amazing country. I'm really very happy and honored to be with you today. You know that I've visited Joburg last year in November. And of course, I'm really upset that I have not visited Cape Town. Maybe next time and soon. And of course, you know, I have this feeling that it would have been important for Victoria to speak with you about her work and about her ideas today. I'd like to share some my feelings and explain my state today because Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, had one more difficult, terrible night. Today, Russia attacked the capital with more than 500 of drones and missiles, killing 18 people in our city. So these are just like our everyday context here in Ukraine and in Kyiv. And maybe I need just to explain that sometimes I need time to think or to say something because of my state after this terrible night. Thank you.
No, I'll take as much time as you need. And thank you so much again for taking the time to plug in and be with us here. And maybe as a way to begin, and maybe as a way of also bringing Victoria's voice into the room, may I ask you just to read for us from the book?
Okay, just I need time to open this file. I think I need to explain, to describe you the context, yes, of this chapter I decided to share with you. So this is the chapter about my friend and Victoria's close friend Larissa Denisenko, who is also a very active PEN person in Ukraine. She is a writer, she is a lawyer, human rights defender, And this is the chapter about Larissa, which Victoria wrote about their meeting in Kiev in April 2022. You know that part of Kiev region was occupied by Russians in 2022, so the capital was blocked by Russians, and many people, among them I was as well, had to leave the city for some time, but a lot of Ukrainian writers, journalists, activists, human rights defenders decided to stay in the city, and Larissa Denisenko was among these people because she has elder parents, she has a dog, and she just couldn't leave her favorite native city. And just at the moment when our mayor announced that the Kiev region was liberated by the Ukrainian army, Victoria Amelina, as a very brave person, decided to go to Kiev and to meet our friends, yes, and colleagues in Kiev. And one of these people, of these women she met in Kiev was Larissa Denisenko. I'm just trying to find this chapter. So the chapter is two women, one dog, and countless victims of gender-based violence. As a lawyer, Larissa Denisenko works with Russia's crimes, evidence of their crimes in occupied and liberated territories of Ukraine. And when they met, one more important detail, when they met in April 2022, Victoria was surprised because Larissa was without makeup, without bright dresses and haircut and so on, because she is a really wonderful, beautiful, and very bright woman. But during that horrifying month, she couldn't find, any energy to continue thinking, about makeup or beautiful things in our life. So it will be a part of this chapter about their meeting and about very important conversation they had about our future. It's the first time I see Larissa without makeup, in gray, nondescript clothes and with a lost look on her face. She was always the brightest, a brunette with beautiful eyes, flowery suits, colorful jewelry, and incomparable expertise in law and women's rights. Now, a month after the full-scale Russian invasion, it seems that only the expertise remains. Larissa looks like her own shadow. I brought her colorful candies as a present. She is looking at them in disbelief, as if colors all went away, broke into shades, and disappeared, as if washed away by tears. She talks. I listen. She has been listening to women throughout her law career. I have to listen to her now. Suddenly, she stops, looks at me, and asks, "Can you see the future? I mean, I can see today, but I try to imagine our life in several years, and I cannot. Even half a year or a month is hard. I just don't see it." "I see it," I say. She waits for me to elaborate. "I see the future. I mean, we might get hit by the Iskanders at this very moment, but at the same time, I somehow see Ukraine after the war. I don't know if we are in the future, but there is Ukraine after the war," I say, and turn away. I think it's enough for the beginning. I really love this part and this chapter because this excerpt can show us, can describe us the situation and our feelings at the beginning of full-scale war, Russia's war against Ukraine. And it's really very important conversation between two friends, between two women in times of war. And especially this sentence about Iskander, that everyone can be hit by Russian missile. when you know already about Victoria's death, it could be even more painful and maybe symbolic in this situation and in story of this book.
Thank you so much. I think so I've got a plan with sort of questions, but as you were reading, there's something in the book, I think that Victoria says about when people see Ukrainians, they see only the war and sort of like, and I guess I'm trying not to also do that, or at least this is my attempt to also not do that. But I wanted to ask you, and this is a difficult question. I wonder if we can work backwards, if you can tell me, if you wouldn't mind, just going behind the curtain, tell us when were you, where were you when you heard what had happened to Victoria? And then we can just work backwards from there to the book, to your friendship. But maybe we can start with that moment. But it's a difficult question, I know. So apologies for that.
I was in Kiev, in the capital, and I took part in one book presentation. And because of that, I was not among first people who learned about this news, because I could check my phone and all emails and calls only after the presentation, after this event. As well, you know, this event was in a shelter, which is ordinary situation now in Ukraine. So it seems I even didn't have a good connection, good internet connection. So just after the event, I called our friend, our colleague and pen member, Sofia Chelak. And Sofia told me that Victoria was in Kramatorsk. It's Donetsk region in Ukraine, front line at the moment. So she was in Kramatorsk at the moment when Russia attacked the restaurant in the center of the city. And Victoria and her Colombian colleagues, Colombian writers, were exactly in this restaurant at the moment of the attack. And that Victoria was heavily injured. So it was all like information. At that moment, I was shocked and I was even surprised because I didn't know about this trip to Kramatorsk. Victoria wrote to me in the morning about Izum. It's another city, also like east of Ukraine. She wrote to me about this trip, and I didn't know that she was going to visit Kramatorsk on that day. So then I remember we had a lot of other calls with our colleagues, with Volodymyr Yermolenko, president of PEN Ukraine, with some doctors, friends, Victoria's relatives. And next day, I decided to go to the hospital in Dnipro, because after the tragedy, Victoria spent some days in the reanimation. She was in coma, so we spent her close friends, her relatives, her family spent these last days with her in hospital in Dnipro.
Yeah, sorry about that, and thank you for sharing. And then maybe a follow-up question to that is, can you talk us from that moment to the manuscript, how do we end up with the book in our hands? Just tell us about that journey.
You know, I think it could be right to start this story from 2022, because it was such time in our life, in lives of Ukrainian writers, intellectuals, cultural managers, when we were trying to find our right and new role in these circumstances, you know, in circumstances of war. And Victoria also trying to find this right place, right role, and right genre, you know, even right voice for her writing in these circumstances. So you already mentioned that she became a war crimes researcher. So she started documenting Russia's war crimes. And then she also found this new genre, which could be really useful and helpful in these circumstances, and could be based on this new experience, on this experience of field missions, she had. So she decided to write a book, nonfiction book about Ukrainian women who documenting Russia's war crimes since 2014 in Ukraine. And it had to be a collection of reportage stories, but then we received, I think, more complicated genre where you can find elements of diary, of reportage, interviews, essays, some even like historical or philosophical context, and so on. And 5 days before the tragedy and her trip to Kramatorsk, she decided to send me the manuscript. Victoria was amazing. She was very talented in black humor, I should say. So usually all her jokes were like remarkable for all of us. And in this email, I remember she wrote to me that I know that our colleagues sent you their unpublished or unfinished books because like no one knows what can happen in our life in Ukraine. So please download and save my manuscript as well, because I'm going to other like frontline territories soon. So it would be better if you like save this file. But if something happens, please stay in contact, stay in touch with my husband, Alex Amelin. I remembered about this file and this email, I think maybe 2-3 days after the funeral. We had 2 funerals in the most important cities for Victoria, in Kyiv and in Lviv. And then I had 2 weeks in my life, for my own and for my like inner conversation and my dialogue with Victoria. It was important for me, and during that weeks I was reading this manuscript, and it was of course painful. Sometimes I was angry because I didn't know about some Victoria's trips to very dangerous parts of Ukraine. Sometimes I just laughing. Sometimes I was so happy and proud of my colleague and her talent and her style, her writing in English, because it's not ordinary, like situation for Ukrainian writers to write their fiction or non-fiction books in English. And of course, this manuscript helped me during that first days of my like pain and loss to go through this experience in my life. And then maybe in 1 month, we had our first conversation with Victoria's husband, Alex Amelin. I, as a manager, first of all, decided to invite and involve 2 more editors and Victoria's friends, Irina Grusha and Sasha Dovzhak. And then we started this long editorial work, because Victoria wrote only approximately 60% of her book, of this like whole idea she wanted to share with the audience. And we had 2 main tasks. First of all, we decided and we promised ourselves that we can't change anything in this manuscript, in this text, because it's already like a monument for us. And of course, we have no right to do anything with this manuscript after Victoria's death. But we wanted to help the audience, to help readers to go through this reading and to understand Victoria's ideas better. And because of that, we prepared more than 100 footnotes. We prepared our afterwards, where we trying to explain the main idea of this book and some maybe difficult places. First of all, empty pages, in this book. And also we had our second task to compare all parts of this book, all chapters of this book, in this manuscript, with this final manuscript, and with other files we found in Victoria's archive. So it took us approximately 1 year to finish this work, this editorial work. And usually we have every week online meetings where we discussing, where we like decided what should we do, with this question or with this part of the book. And we also laughing a lot, we thinking and we speaking about Victoria, and all the time we had this feeling that she is still with us. And even now here in this online space, I have the same feeling.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So the foreword to the book is by Margaret Atwood, and I just want to read just a tiny bit. And so she writes, this is the beginning of the foreword. In the middle of a war, there's little past or future, little perspective, little accurate prediction. There is only the white heat of the moment, the immediacy of perception, the intensity of emotions, including anger, dismay, fear. And I think this is what the reader feels in these dispatches, the white heat of the moment, the intensity of the emotions. But there's also, I think, for me, and I have to tread carefully, I don't know much about Victoria's earlier work, her fiction, but it seems like there's a profound shift that takes place within her in this book. Not only, as you had already spoken about, moving from the form of the novel to nonfiction to its own, a different brand of nonfiction, but she's also moving from someone who's primarily a fiction writer to a war crimes researcher. And I wondered, how did you see this shift in person? Like, do you get what I'm trying to ask? Just how was it a perceptible shift in your own, yeah, in person? Because I'm guessing that your relationship goes back a long time.
I think we can see all these like changes and shifts in someone's life, usually during like the longer period of time. Sometimes it's I don't know, years when we see this transformation of someone, for example, writing or lifestyle. But when you have war in your country, when you live in war, now I can tell you that all these transformations can happen in our life during some days or some weeks, not just years. And the same was with Victoria's life and writing. So it was very quick process. It was very quick transformation. I spent first weeks of the full-scale war with Victoria in her apartment in Lviv. So I could like witness all these transformations and changes because she was trying to help, of course, other people. It's very important if you speak about Victoria to remember that it was a person with enormous empathy to everyone. So at the beginning of the big war, she started volunteering, collecting money for some people for the army. She was working at the warehouse with some humanitarian things for Ukrainians. She was trying to organize some events. All the time she had new people in her apartment in Lviv from different parts of Ukraine. Sometimes she was a driver who helped people to cross the border to Poland or other countries. So she was trying to be helpful. She was trying to be useful. It's ordinary feeling and desire of Ukrainians during the war. I think the like more complicated situation was with this creative part of Victoria, because at the beginning, already in I think March, April 2022, surprisingly, like for everyone, she started writing poetry, documentary poetry. It was published as a collection of poems, unfortunately, only after her death, but it's really very powerful. And I think it's another shift, in her like life and in her professional work, because it's really like a new voice in Ukrainian poetry. This is documentary poetry about war, about of course, Ukrainian women, her sisters, so-called, because usually she used this term, this word sisters in her poems. Then she started writing essays for Ukrainian and for foreign audience, and all the time, she had this feeling that it's not enough. Okay, maybe it's important for some readers, but it's not enough to change the situation, to help Ukraine to win in this war and to receive justice for Ukrainians, because it was her main idea, main goal of her life and work during the war, to bring justice for Ukrainians. And this is the main goal of this book we discussing today. So I think because of all these conversations she had with herself, first of all, she found this decision to start writing nonfiction, which was new for her, totally new genre. And also she decided to write in English. It was a challenging decision for her, but she studied creative writing in Boston, and it was in English. So she was preparing herself for this shift for writing in English for some time. But I could say that you need bravery to start, writing in another language, which is not your native language. And she was brave enough to do it. So I think all these events in our life, this intensity of these events, especially at the beginning of Russia's full-scale war, all of these events were triggers in her life or as a writer. And because of that, she decided that, okay, it's time to find this style and this form, which could be the most important in these circumstances. And of course, she decided that she can speak with a foreign audience in this case, because in Ukraine, we can understand everything with our own knowledge. But she wanted to explain many things in our history, in Russian-Ukrainian relationship during centuries in this book. And she wanted to show our current situation through stories of Ukrainian women.
Thank you so much again, Tetyana. We'll come back to the book in a moment. I realized I made a cardinal sin, committed a cardinal sin as an interviewer. I forgot to ask the most obvious question, which is where and how did you meet?
We met, it seems, in 2015. And maybe at the beginning it was online, like some chatting, maybe on Facebook. Because in 2014, 2015, Victoria decided to start her writing career, because before this time she was not thinking about literature and about her role in Ukrainian culture. She was IT specialist, programmist, and because of that, we didn't met earlier. But in 2015, just after the Revolution of Dignity in Ukraine, she wrote her first novel, Fall Syndrome. It might be translated into English soon as well. So she wrote this book about, as for me, in my opinion, this is the book about our generation in Ukraine and our attitude, our role in the Revolution of Dignity, which was very important event in our current history and in our personal lives. So I read this book, and I found it really very important and like a new voice in Ukrainian literature, in Ukrainian contemporary literature. And I decided to write to her about like my feelings, just to support a young writer in this context. And then we started speaking like more often when I came to PEN as an executive director. It was 2018. And she was, it seems, the first person, PEN member, who wrote to me with her like congratulations. and also with her proposal. So she wrote to me that if I need her help with any human rights like issues, with any campaigns, trips, events, she is ready to help and take part in all these events. And just in 2 months, we went together to the Pan International Congress in Pune, where Victoria met a lot of Pan friends and Pan colleagues from different countries. And because of that, usually when we tell about Victoria now, we always say that this is one of the most active PAN members, and even not just members of PAN Ukraine. I really think that one of the most active members of PAN International community, PAN International family. So she was very active during my work for PAN, and it was such a type of person who always, shared her ideas with others. So she was not such a type of writer who wants just to have all her ideas with herself, So it was really often situations when Victoria wrote to me, usually at night already, that, I have some ideas. We need to publish this book. We need to translate this book. We need to organize this festival, or we need to invite this person, this artist, this writer, and so on. So in my life, in my professional, personal life, she was a writer, an artist who always motivated and inspired me for different initiatives. And, I have a list of different projects I launched in my professional life thanks to her. And even, after her death, already in July 2023, for example, I launched our online memorial dedicated to Ukrainian culture makers killed by Russia since 2022. And in description of this project, I wrote that the idea of this project belongs to Victoria Amelina. So even now, I have this feeling that she continued to motivate me for different important things in my life. And of course, she was a wonderful friend who always knew when it's important to write to you or to call you and just to ask, how are you today? Especially, during all these attacks, and when she was in Lviv or abroad, she always wrote to everyone in Kiev or in Kramatorsk, Kharkiv, and so on. How are you? How are you? Because it seemed that sometimes we lost information about attacks or about missiles, but Victoria always knew everything about our life, about security situation. So it was a person with a big heart and with enormous empathy, as I said.
Thank you so much again, Tetyana. I just have actually, I have a couple of more questions before we return to the book, but I promise just we've spoken about, or at least you've spoken about how this moment, these last couple of years changed Victoria. But just bearing in mind how you started our conversation, I wonder how has this moment changed you? And if that's something you can speak about. I'll ask you about the work you've done with PIN Ukraine, but I'm curious if you could talk to us about how the last few years have changed you.
Oh, it's an interesting and very complicated question, of course. Of course, everyone in Ukraine is tired, but sometimes I think that later, after Ukraine's victory, we, would be able to organize some trainings for other people how to continue, to live in times of war, to continue to feel happy sometimes, to work with your pain every day, to continue, building our families, working, creating big projects, helping our country, and to have 24 hours every day for your work and for all your initiatives. So I can be honest here that I was tired, I was exhausted many times since 2022. But it seems I found, and it's very important to find your own like tools how to continue your life and your work in such circumstances. Um, I think it's easier for me to understand what is my priority and what is important for me, because in times of war, you have like black-white life. You know, this is love and this is not love. It's there is no like something in the middle of all these questions. This is important in your work and this is just tiny small things and you cannot think about them now, for example. So I think it's weird, but maybe even I became more strategic and more systematic in my life and in my work. I could be very focused if it's needed for my work and for this current moment of time or for my life. And of course, I don't know how it's impossible, but I maybe 10 times more productive now. And I'm trying to be such a person in my life. And it's also weird because after Penn, I left Penn 6 months ago. I I decided that I want to study. So now I'm studying. I'm studying at the MBA program in the business school, and I just recently launched my own cultural agency, and I want to work in Ukrainian regions which are close to the front line. So now I'm trying to work and to be focused on the things and projects which are really meaningful for me, because I know that our lives very short. As Victoria said, no one knows what can happen, and you should do as much as you can do in this life. And it's important not to think about tomorrow. Okay, it's important to have strategy, even for 1 year, for 2 years. I already can work with long-term initiatives. But in my own life, this day, today, is the most important day in my life. And I think this is philosophy for all Ukrainians now. Because, today we had such a horrifying night and morning, and it's a happy moment that we woke up and we continued our life after that. No one knows, and you must be productive. You must be happy today, not tomorrow. For tomorrow, I will think tomorrow in the morning.
Thank you again, Tetyana. Coming back to the book, the subtitle is A War and Justice Diary, and you'd started speaking about justice. I'm just going to read just a little passage from the book, and then I want to ask you two sort of interrelated questions. So the passage I'm reading from is from a section titled War Instructions No One Wanted, and it goes. The American writer Susan Sontag thought photographing was an act of non-intervention. And this is a quotation from Sontag. The person who intervenes cannot record. The person who is recording cannot intervene. She wrote in a book on photography. I remember it well. The characters of my unfinished novel about the war argue about that all the time. And as an author, I was perhaps on the side of those who choose to intervene, not record. However, I'll know that Genia lets me, of all people, in so I can record. That somehow this recording, this storytelling is an intervention in itself. And you've already spoken. I was going to ask you about that question that this book is primarily about justice, but storytelling also as a way, as a means of attaining justice. And I just wondered if you could just speak a little about that, but also as a way of speaking about some of the work that you did with some of the work you had to do with Penn Ukraine that maybe some of us on this side of the world cannot imagine. Just share with us a little bit about that because she calls you when a writer is abducted. And yeah, so I just wanted if you could just shed some light on some of the work that you had to do, the war dialogues, all of that.
I start with Victoria's book. Some readers asked me, it seems in Sweden, about the title of this book, Looking at Women, Looking at War. Um, when you read like this and you see this title, you can think at the beginning, before reading the whole book, you can think that this is about a writer, about someone who just like a witness of all these events, of all these stories. So this person is not inside, if you think only about the title. And I think that at the beginning of this idea to write a nonfiction book, Victoria really wanted to write a book, a collection of reportage stories about her heroines without her voice and role, in this story. But it's interesting that during this like writing and even after Victoria's death, we see that she's a main heroine of this book. And it's also about her talent as a writer. It's also about tragedy, her own tragedy in this case. And also it's about her work even after her death, because I always feel that she continued to work for Ukraine and for advocacy of Ukrainian, interests and justice for Ukrainians. So it's something. Maybe, I speak with you about some mystical things, but after all these losses in my life, in our lives, I really feel it and I really believe in this power of people even after their death. So for me, Victoria is present in this book and in our lives even now, and especially in Ukraine's story and history, of course. Your question was also about pen work, and you are right that usually when I describe our work and our main initiatives for other pen centers, for our colleagues from other pen centers, they could be a little bit surprised because fortunately they don't work with documentation of war crimes, with the legacy of our killed colleagues, Ukrainian artists and writers. But in our situation, it was like intuition partly, and also the same feeling of justice, which which triggered us to launch all these initiatives. You mentioned dialogues on war. I hope that this project will be also presented as a book in English soon. But we launched this project, this online video project with PEN International just at the beginning of full-scale war. It was really like February 2022, just Russia started its full-scale invasion, aggression, and in 2 days we already started organizing this first dialogue between Philip Sands and Andrei Kurkov. And then we organized more than 40 dialogues between Ukrainian and foreign intellectuals. Victoria took part in this project, and also Margaret Atwood as well. And, it's because of that we decided to ask her to write this foreword for the book, because Margaret is mentioned in Victoria's manuscript. Victoria describes this moment when she came to my apartment to watch dialogue between Margaret Atwood and Ukrainian writer Natalka Snedanko. And when I read this moment in the book, I decided that, okay, now I have a right to speak to Margaret about this idea, and I'm very grateful to PEN Canada. They helped us to speak to Margaret and to prepare this text. I think Victoria could be happy to have such a foreword, for her work and her book. Apart these dialogues on war, I can mention also our literary volunteering trips to the front line and liberated parts of Ukraine. PEN continues this initiative, this project. I think it was the main part of really our work, of my work, and Victoria motivated me, you see, as well to start this initiative, because she was the first person who told me at the beginning of the big war that, Tetyana, if you decide to go to Kharkiv, this is my like second native city in Ukraine, which is on the border with Russia. And she told me that if you decide to go to Kharkiv, I will join you for sure. So thanks to Victoria, I organized our first such trip to Kharkiv in June 2022. And then all of us understood that, okay, it must be our work during war. We should bring Ukrainian intellectuals, journalists, and as well foreign journalists and intellectuals to this frontline and liberated territories of Ukraine. I'd like to mention, which is important, and I want to ask your audience to find these websites, because we launched a range of different online memorials. You know, when you have so many losses every day in your society, in your country, it's very important to document all these names, their stories, their voices, and to share these stories, not just with Ukrainians, but with the whole world. So we launched one initiative dedicated to our culture, figured killed by Russia. Also, we have another memorial dedicated to Ukrainian journalists killed since 2022. And we organized different formats, exhibitions, newsletters, or paper reports dedicated to all these cases. And maybe the last project I mentioned will be in solidarity with Ukraine. So in 2022, we decided to invite foreign intellectuals to visit Ukraine, because I understood that, okay, we can go to other countries, we can speak to your audience, for example, yes, and here I'm trying to explain you how it's to live in war and to continue our life and work. But only when you are here, you can understand, you can feel, and you can see, you know, what's going on. And of course, there are many stereotypes in international media, in national media about the situation in Ukraine. And it's really important to for Ukrainians as well in Ukraine, you know, to see this solidarity with our people during the war. So we decided to launch this initiative, and we brought to Ukraine, we invited to Ukraine more than 60 intellectuals from all like continents. And of course, I remember this meeting and trip of Damon Galgut to Kiev, to Ukraine. I remember even our first conversation, our first dinner in Kiev, when he told that, you know, to be honest, I know nothing about Ukraine, but it's so important for me to be here and to learn more. And then after this meeting in Ukraine, I came to Joburg, and he also came to Joburg to meet there. So, you know, these are all these connections. This is this people's like lace work. And it's so important to have these connections, you know, between us, because after Joburg, I started watching movies, reading books about South Africa, because I found a lot of common, you know, in our history and in our culture. You know, what is genocide against your people, what is pain, what is losses, what is the situation when you didn't receive justice for your people. And now, after this trip and after meeting with many great people in Joburg, I feel that I have this connection. And today, here, I have the same feeling. Thanks for this feeling, Bongani.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I still have like a million more questions, but we are running out of time. So I'm just gonna come back again to Victoria, just ask you maybe two personal questions. One is, yeah, what do you miss most about her presence in your life? And then the second is, yeah, if she could see readers engaging with her work now, especially outside Ukraine, what do you think she would hope they carry with them after closing the book?
Hmm. Thinking about your first question, I think often I need her advice. I need her just listen to me. Sometimes we need this main listener in our life, because it helps us. This person helps us to think and to find a right solution in our life. And especially when I'm just starting my new agency, I'm thinking about many cultural initiatives in Ukraine. And of course, I want to share all these ideas and news with her. And I can't in this case. For sure, I want to invite her for my birthday, because this is a person who started me to celebrate our birthdays. And I continue, to organize these celebrations because of her. So always before my birthday, I remember that, okay, I must organize it because I promised Victoria to do it in my life. Of course, I'm missing her jokes, her humor, black humor, because you can't live in war without black humor. And Victoria was the main expert, in this field. And I really need her for these conversations. And thanks for her. Thanks, Victoria, and this book work on this book, editorial work. I found so many people, so many friends in my life, and I'd like to speak to Victoria about all these amazing women she brought to my life. And I'd like to thank her for all these amazing people I have now in my life. Maybe I still a little bit angry that she went to Kramatorsk. So I have many, many things to tell her at this moment. And your second question was about readers, about the audience. First of all, I'm very grateful that you read this book or you are going to read this book. It's so important for all of us that Victoria continues, to speak to her audience, to her readers. We have this formula in our life. When you read writer's texts, this writer is still alive. This Victoria said when we lost another writer, Volodymyr Vakulenko, and she found his diary of occupation. You might know this story. And this is the same with Victoria. When you read her texts, when you read her books, her poetry, you help us to feel that she is still with us and that her work continues, in our life and in our country. As well, if this book can help you to understand the Ukrainian history, Ukrainian culture, and our current war situation better, of course, we would be very grateful if you share this information, these stories with your friends or with your audiences, with your colleagues, because it's about solidarity. And I should say, if I can prepare a list of things which can help us to continue our life and our work in times of war. Among these things, for sure, I will add solidarity of other people and other countries. It's always so important to know that other people can understand you, without long explanations, without long sentences and words. They're just with you. They're just in solidarity, and it helps us really to move on. And another thing, usually when I speak to other writers, journalists, and intellectual audiences, abroad, I ask them to help Ukrainian literature and Ukrainian culture to be heard and to be visible. And for this task, for this necessity, we need to have more translations, to have more joint initiatives, joint exhibitions, joint discussions, literary events. And this is also, a right moment to say that Ukrainians didn't do enough to build bridges between our cultures. This is also our huge mistake, because I know that sometimes writers or journalists can say that, oh, you don't translate enough our books, you don't help our culture or something like that. But the war helped me to understand our mistakes. And this is Ukraine, and Ukrainians didn't do enough to understand South Africa and many others, countries and cultures. So I'd like to wish you and Ukrainians as well to find these tools and ways how to build this friendship and this meeting, this bridge between our cultures and between our literatures. So this is my main call to action. Please, I'd like to stay in touch. I'd like to know more about your literature, about your ideas, your pain as well. And we will be happy if you learn more about Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian literature.
We have a deal. uh, and yeah, and just thank you
You
so
know,
much again.
In Ukraine, we usually show heart. Can you
Oh,
see my heart? Or
yes.
another way to show heart, it's like this.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you so much again for, yeah, just coming to spend time with us. And thank you for sharing, for talking, yeah, just talking, sharing with us about Victoria, about the book and the journeys you've been on. And yeah, all our love and all the best. And thank you again. And thanks to everyone tuned in. And yeah, hope you have a good night.
Bongani, Josie, thank you so much and hope to see you very soon. Thank you.